me, it's about finding ways when you're in your crap, shitty moments in your life. It's finding ways that are like essentially low hanging fruit. What can I do just to get through this bit so I can breathe for a minute to just get me through? And so the Happy Me project was an answer to the messages I was getting. Initially, it was like a self-study course. And over the last 6 years since Ross's death, it has just grown and grown into all of the things that you mentioned.
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. In this episode, I'll chat with the former TV actress, TEDx speaker, life coach, and founder of the Happy Me project, Holly Matthews. Holly has established a solid social media following of over 40,000 followers across her platforms and has over 3 million views on her award-winning YouTube channel, and is the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Happy Me Project. Sadly, in 2017, Holly's husband Ross died of brain cancer, and she vlogged about her experience. The lead up to his death and the aftermath were featured extensively in UK media, both in print, radio and television, opening a brand new audience up to Holly. Holly launched her flagship brand, the Happy Me Project, in 2017, just months after the death of her husband, and has watched hundreds go through its virtual doors and many more into in-person workshops at the same name. Holly is a mum of 2 daughters, Brooke and Texas, who worked with her on the Happy Me Project Kids online visualization course and in-person workshop. On this podcast, I always aim to speak to people that have specialized in an area of personal development or have experienced something life-changing and have managed to extract some form of learning or understanding from it. Today, I think we're going to get both. How are you today, Holly?
I'm really good, thank you. It always makes me smile when I hear introductions because it always feels like I've lived 100 lives. And I'm like, how have I packed all that in? It's almost like I'm sat there listening. I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, that did happen.
That's all true.
Yeah, that is true. That is all a thing. It's always weird hearing your own stuff listened to back, isn't it? But yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm really excited about talking to you. I get the impression we might share a very similar ethos.
I absolutely think so. I mean, the fact that we've already been chatting far too long before recording, that's some great stuff. I mean, nobody's going to hear it, but It was fantastic.
Well, we threatened to press record about 6 times, I think, but didn't, because we were putting the world to rights. I'm sure we've got all the answers right. Sure of it.
Always.
But listen, like I said, it's such a real honor and privilege to have you on here. You've had such a turbulent life by the sound of it, and you've had some highs and some lows, and I think that makes for a very well-rounded human who sees things as they are and is always trying to be helpful. And I get that vibe from you. But I mean, for those that haven't come across you yet, do you want to talk a bit about your journey so far and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so as you said in your introduction, I started as a TV actress. I was 11 when I started in a TV show called Biker Grove, which was set in a kids' youth club. And
I remember that, loved it.
Yeah, those that are sort of my age. I mean, it was on for about 20 years, in fairness. I was on it for about seven years, and all of my growing up was on TV. And I'm very lucky. I come from a nice family. My dad was a welder when I was growing up. He worked on the oil rigs and stuff, and my mum worked in a bank. I've got a younger sister, nice home, and I come from a family of very opinionated people who are willing to get out on the front line. I was brought out on protests and marches from being a young kid. We'd be doing anti-racism marches and out on we were always kind of taught to stand up for what was important to you when we were younger. And I really, my whole family are very like that, and it actually has put me in real good stead as an adult, because I learned how to debate and how to be loud and not to feel like I had to hide away. And certainly my dad particularly taught me, you're always going to leak out tells that you're working class and you don't come from money. Whether it's your voice, whether it's the way you dress, whatever you got, people will always know that. But never let anybody make you feel less than, make you feel small, and that you can't do the things that you want to do. And that's such, I mean, I'm so lucky that I came from a family that gave me that gift. And so when I came to them and was like, I am an actress, they probably did have some quiet conversations to themselves that were like, is this like, are we doing this? Is this happening? But they let me be, and they just encouraged whatever I wanted to do. And so when I wrote a letter to Biker Grove and asked for a part, which I was gifted when I was on my 30th birthday, they gifted it to me. They found it on the computer, which I was surprised we even had a computer. I thought I hand wrote it, to be honest. And they put it on a canvas for me, and it was this letter, and it just said, Dear, and it was the casting director's name, Dear D, my name is Holly and I am an actress, you know, just affirming it because I knew who I was. And I put, I had brown hair and green eyes, and I'd coloured them in brown and green, just visual, you know, just I didn't have a photograph of myself. And it said, at one point it says, I am not shy one bit. Then right at the bottom of this letter, it just says, P.S. please write back soon, because I was just dead keen to hear from them, really. And I did write back. They got me in. I auditioned loads, and then I didn't get the part. And not at one point in that moment did I think, well, that's me done then with acting. I just thought, so it's doable. Okay. It's doable. I got on the set. So next time I don't, and within 6 months, they just wrote a part in for me. So that's how I started in that space. And it's so funny looking back on that, because I still do business in the same way. It's still a case of just knocking on the doors and creating doors that weren't there, and just creating my own way of doing it. That's probably a bit messy and unconventional, but actually it's how it's worked for, you know, from being young. So that was always a space I thought I would be in, and I was so driven in that world, and just, you know, all I wanted was the entertainment industry. I wanted to be a singer, dancer, actor, all of those things. I wanted to do TV, and I started to do it. Not 17, 18, 19 was I think 18 or 19. I signed to Sony, and I did Top of the Pops and MTV, and released a single, and did that kind of route as well, which I didn't massively love. And it was a weird time for music as well. And I didn't love it. It wasn't really my thing, but I still wanted to experience where that journey would take me. I then continued to do that and continue to work in that space. And I really didn't think it would be any other way. In the background, I always did self-development. So before it was like a thing that we now know as self-development, when I was 11 and 12 and I'm on TV, that wasn't easy to do that. That was, you're going to a normal school and you are the kid off the telly. It's not like now, like my kids could not care any less that I sometimes turn up on TV. They are like, so how many followers have you got on TikTok? Shame on you. You have not got enough. That's like, they do not care. I mean, I got verified on Instagram, right? I got verified on Instagram, and I said to my kids, oh, I've got verified on Instagram. That's good. And they went, are you verified on TikTok? How many followers have you got? You got 1 million followers. And I was like, no, I haven't. Like, they're so unimpressed by me. It's terrible. But, when we were young, people weren't on telly. Like, that was a big deal to be on telly. And that, for me, created this kind of, eyes on what I was doing. And it created a lot of insecurity for me. And certainly with the way that I looked and just how I felt about myself. And so I started to do self-development, and most of it was made up. Like, most of it was what would happen if I did this. And it was very I look back and I think, I wonder where that really came from. But it was just, I have for sure within me this optimism and this desire to find a way through. And it's something that when I see a problem or a challenge that arises, there's something within me that's like, there's a route through it. As Marie Forleo says, everything is figure outable. Like, it is. And that in my mind, that's how my brain works. It's like, you put something in Google and it's whirring around to find the answers. That's like, my brain will work in that same way. And so even when I was in that space of feeling really crap, I was still looking for, there must be a way through to not feel like this. So I always did self-development. Never once thought it would be something I would do as a job. because I was an actor and I enjoyed playing a character, and I never in a million years thought I would be on stages or on TV sharing my own life. It didn't even cross my mind. When my husband Ross was diagnosed with brain cancer, that was the pivotal shift for me. I mean, I had started to see a shift when I became a mom in terms of my own expectations of things, and I guess I started to see that there was a world outside of acting that I was interested in, and I started to create business ventures and things that would make me have the power back, because the entertainment industry can feel like quite a powerless space. Sometimes you're always coming cap in hand looking for a job, for the next thing. It's always somebody else driving it, or it certainly was then. It may be not so much now. And so I was always doing other things. But then when Ross was diagnosed with brain cancer, there was a total shift in my psyche, and it was like a snap. It wasn't like there was nothing gradual about the change. I walked into my house after he'd been diagnosed. I was on my own, and I remember walking in, looking around the house, and suddenly everything in my house felt really odd. Like I would see the post on the table that was there before. I'd see, things that you have in your home, and I looked at it and just thought, like, why is that there? Or why did I care about that? Or what does that matter? Or things that suddenly seemed important didn't any longer. I knew I had just booked a film. I'd finished doing BBC Casualty. It was a big storyline. It was well put together, and there was a lot of interest in me after that. And I'd booked this film. So in my mind, I was like, I need to ring my agent. I need to cancel that. And then I was like, I don't care about any of it. Like, I don't even know why I ever wanted to be an actor. I have no interest in it. And it was like this snap in this change in my mind that I didn't see coming. And in terms of going into self-development, I think I'd kind of already, it was organic. There wasn't like this sort of thought process of right now I'm going to be a life coach, or now I'm going to make this my work. But it was just a case of I started to talk more openly about the stuff I'd done a lot of work on for so many years. I mean, I was literally like a closet meditator when I was a kid. Like, I would be going out in the streets and drinking cheap wine with my friends and, being quite naughty, to be quite honest, but then coming home and listening to chanting monks and meditation music because I thought it might help. Like, it was a weird thing. I'd been doing it for a long time. And so by the time Ross was diagnosed with brain cancer, I was just talking about it and sharing, and it very organically suddenly became this thing. Probably the entrepreneurial switch was switched on in my brain, where I was like, maybe this is just the work I do. When Ross died, again, there was a shift in that there was so much press, as you said in the intro, about Ross's death. And there was eyes on, like I hadn't experienced in terms of my personal life. There was paparazzi at Ross's funeral. There was like so much intrigue in what was happening, which was a lot, that kind of suddenly had all these people messaging going, how do I do it? How I need to understand. And, as we talked about prior to hitting record, for me, it's about finding ways when you're in your crap, shitty moments in your life. It's finding ways that are like essentially low hanging fruit. What can I do just to get through this bit so I can breathe for a minute to just get me through? And so the Happy Me project was an answer to the messages I was getting. Initially, it was like a self-study course. And over the last 6 years since Ross's death, it has just grown and grown into all of the things that you mentioned. So it hasn't been a linear, pretty route to where we are today, but actually that's probably the magic in it, that I think people can see I'm in the trenches with everybody else, and I get it, and I'm wading through the same shit that everybody is, and I'm just doing it in a more public way and trying to find some sense in it.
Wow. I just, I meet extraordinary people all the time, and you're certainly one of them. Your ability for critical thinking is like, I've not quite heard somebody that started that critical thinking quite so early as you. That's quite impressive.
It's quite weird looking back on it. I think it is, because I didn't really. I asked one of my friends who was in Biker Grove with me, because when I was writing my book, I kind of was like, did I always do this? Like, am I making this up? And I said it to her, and she went, oh yeah. She was like, we'd be sat in the green room and you'd be telling us how life is not a dress rehearsal and we all just needed to get our shit together and we needed to do some stuff. I was like, oh, what an idiot. Oh my God.
I mean, one thing that really strikes me about you is your sort of pioneering approach to life. And it's like, I always use this analogy about like a field with an established track that everybody uses all the time. And it's like, you're one of those people who come along now and again and go, but I don't want to go there. And they start making their own track, and it's hard because you've got to bash down all the brambles and you've got to look for all the pitfalls and stuff. But then eventually you get to where you want to go, and then all the other buggers get to just stroll along. It's like, great.
You know what? That's a great way of looking at it. And I always use that in terms of habits. I use the same thing in terms of the field, and I think you're right. Like I definitely think that is the way. Whatever the reasoning for that is, you know, I definitely do look for. I don't want to do it that way. And there's so many things, even with every space I've ever done, you know, whether it's acting, you know, the acting route would have been a case of, you know, well, you get picked, you go to drama school and you get picked to do the thing, or and I didn't do it that way. I wrote a letter and asked the question. In the self-development world, I know for a fact when I first started in this world, people were like, you've got to do it this way. You have to do a discovery call with your clients, and they have to, you know, you have to spend a big long chat. And I thought, that sounds really boring. No thanks. I'll put it on. I'll put it on.
It's so similar.
Like, no. I'm so boring. I don't fancy that. I don't want to attract those kind of people into my space. Like, I'll just be myself full out, and then the right people will just message me, and then we'll see where we go from there. I'll voice them. Like, I think that, you know, I think, as you rightly say, like, some of the best things happen that way because we try it, and, you know, it doesn't always mean it works. God,
but there's learning there too, right? You know,
exactly.
It might be a bit harsh at times, but I mean, I love that. I don't want to. Like that whole I just don't want to, like, that is so common amongst people. But the question they stop short of asking themselves, well, what do I want? That's where they stop. They don't get to that bit. And what they don't realize is that you can do whatever you want. Like, you really can. Well, you understand what I mean. I don't mean anything.
Yes, can't fly, but like, so don't,
well,
most people aren't coming with that one, you
you
know.
can't fly.
There's always those that say,
what's your definition of flying, though? You know, semantics is a great tool. But, you know, it's that next question of, well, what do I want? I mean, you're a leader. You know, you are a leader, clearly, and you've always been a leader. It turns out, from the green room, at least, you know. I'm sure he was very popular back then. I love that. It's a great story. But there's something you said back then about, you know, surrounding Ross's death. And it was that what I've come to call that wet fish slap in the face moment, where all of a sudden you think that this is important and that's important and this means something to you and this means something to you, and then something happens, a real life event, real, like, raw feeling of uncontrollableness, and you go, none of this matters. I had one of those not so long ago, and a friend of mine described it as an ego death. And said, like, it's like all of a sudden that conditioning that we've got from wherever, whether it be parents, significant role models, social media, whatever it is, all of a sudden, you know, that just becomes bullshit. It just doesn't matter anymore. And it happens in a second. 1 minute, this is all true. Next minute, nothing's true. And everything's in doubt and everything's up for questioning. And it's like, there's a horrible anxiety, and, you know, I don't know what to call it. I'm not sure I can think of a name for it, but there's a horrible anxiety feeling that comes with that. But if you lean into it, there's also a freedom at the other end of it that is unbelievable, because you don't care what people think anymore. You know, you don't care about, like, all of these just meaningless things that we think are real, but they're not. They're just not. Like, social media, right? Just recently, my social media following's growing. And for a really long time, back before my wet fish slap in the face, it was really, really important to me. I wanted to, I attached my self-worth to it in some weird way. And then I broke 10K, and then I broke 15K, and then I broke 20K. And I was like, nothing's changed. But what has changed is that now when I put out important messages, things that I've learned, more people get to see it. my focus has changed to, it's about service. It's about how can I help others? I see that in you and I really respect it. I see that in you, like
So much,
yeah,
so much. And I love
want
that
to
you said
help.
that, because that's where the power is. You know, when for me is, you know, you're there's a line in a song that I always go on about, and I've forgotten the name, but it's where's it from? I can't think of it from now. It's going to come to me. It'll come to me in the dead of night. But the line is,
Don't text me.
every day, every hour, turn your pain into power.
Oh,
What you'll know where it's from, right? And that for me is what that wet fish slap in the face moment is. That it's in that moment you have a choice. You have a choice what you do with it, and it is, you know, I can bring it to mind, that feeling of it's a fear, it's a dread. It's like somebody just pulls that rug from underneath you, and you get to decide what you do next with it. Yes. I noticed for me, one of the big lessons after Ross died was this feeling, was this recognition of, for sure, ego-based stuff, and this recognition that I had spent a long time in fight, that I had spent a long time from being a kid and being that kid that was on telly of, I'll be the loudest in the room, I'll be the most confident, I'll be top dog, I'll put my paw on everybody else's head, I will be that one. And I would be, you know, I wore this mask of like whatever it was, this confident version. And I'm not saying there's not benefit and power in that, and we need to do what we need to do to get through those moments. When Ross was diagnosed with cancer, you know, you've got all of the stuff attached to that, and I was constantly in fight. When Ross died, I had to sit with myself and go, you're not in a fight. This is not a fight now. And your power is going to come from stripping back all of this stuff and being willing to be wrong, to be willing to learn, to be open to not understanding the world. And for me, it was a case of going, Ross is dead. That makes no sense to me. That is a man that was so full of life, so important, so like, and Ross was autistic, and Ross was very different. He broke the mold over and over again and left his mark on this planet. And if somebody like that cannot be here just in the blink of an eye, then nothing else that I thought made sense makes sense. Yeah. And that for me was the power, that I just sat there and was like, okay, so I need to learn, I need to listen, I need to be willing to be okay with all of my, what we might class as our shadows, you know, our darker corners that we feel, you know, we hide in shame. And over the last 6 years, I have lent into that more than ever. And in doing so, it allows the people that follow me on social media, the people that are in my communities, my clients, it allows them to feel seen, because then they look at me and go, oh, that's a person who on one hand has had some successes and done some good stuff, but on the other hand is a hot mess in so many ways. And both of those things can sit in the same space. And I have this thing that like runs through me, and I'm glad that you get it, because I know that I see it in you as well, like that sense that service-based sort of work. And for me, it's like this thing in my head of like, never leave a man behind. Like I just can't watch it. Like I walk around every day and I meet people that don't see their own amazing power. Yes. And I'm like, I want to shake them. Yes. And so don't see how amazing, and you can't see how close you are to the win, because you're so in these beliefs that you can't have, and you're about this far away from it. And so when we do this work, we can see it. And so when I'm working with people, in whether it's in my membership or my, like, it's that connection and that way of me, like for me, it's always, how do I find them the root? And I don't mean in terms of like me telling them what to do. That's irrelevant, what I give a shit about. But how do I ask them the right questions? Yes. Like how do I unlock it for them to see what their options
How can
are?
we design this map of their mind so they can understand it, they can navigate it, because it's all about them. It's not about us. We don't have answers. We're not better than anyone else. We're not gurus. Absolutely. We're just there as the passenger. We might say now and again, are you sure about this direction? But we're not going to tell them which direction to go, because we're just double checking. But I love all of what you've just said. I mean, I come from quite significant domestic violence and torture as a child. It was tough. It was hard. And when I was 16, there was a big incident at my house. I've told the story many times in the podcast, so apologies, viewers, listeners even. But there was this moment where I lived on my own. I was 16 years old. I had 4 jobs. I was walking home about 11 o'clock at night and I was crying my eyes out because I didn't have any money. I was just broke. I couldn't believe 16. Life cannot be this hard. It can't be true. I just can't accept this. And I'm not saying I was suicidal, but I definitely had a want to give up kind of feeling. And I was crying my eyes out and I got to the end of this lane and there was 20 quid on the floor. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. The lesson from that I took was don't give up. Because the moment before you give up could be the moment just before you find that 20 quid. You just don't know what's around the corner. You have to keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. And you have to, like we were talking about before, or maybe during this conversation, there's often an opportunity in things. And it's like when them wet fish slap in the face moments happened, and they're different for everybody. They're not comparative. The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. That is how it feels. Yeah. And, people ask themselves, can I get through this? Can I navigate my way through this? Will I ever get over it? Well, you don't know that. You can never know that because we're not fortune tellers. The better question is, do you want to? Do you want to get through this? And if you do, everything you do from the moment you make that decision has to be towards that goal. That thing that happened will always be true. If we sit there and we think about it and we dwell on it and we ruminate, which is easy to do, and sometimes we have to do that, sometimes we feel like doing that, and that's okay. But if we do it all the time, that thing will always have that power to make you sad, to hold you back, to put you in bed for a week, whatever it is. And so we have to be on our own side. We have to fight for ourselves. We have to keep pushing forward.
And that there is the huge part of it. That self-compassion is key to everything, and that really is something that I'm constantly affirming in my spaces.
Absolutely.
You've got to do that to yourself. You cannot be against yourself in your own head when you are going through that stuff. If you then put that judgment on top, and that, all of that stuff on top, all those layers of judgment, and it's often based on something somebody else said to you years ago, and
that ego, that collection of conditioning,
you've just taken that baton on and you're beating yourself up with the same shit somebody else did.
Man.
The intention that you just said, set and that intention, and that intention could be as simple, those that are listening, as going, I just want to feel better than this now. I want to feel happy. I want to feel good. I want to feel safe. These are underrated feelings. And if you set that intention, you have to then allow yourself to let go of some of that old stuff and to move forward from it. And there is space to do it. It might not always look like how you think it's going to look. Like, that's the other thing as well. Because, when something is taken away, whether it's a person, whether it's an opportunity, ill health can stop people doing certain things. But that doesn't mean, and this is why, and I'm sure you talk about this a lot as well, but when we talk about values, or I talk about ingredients that I need. So I like to think about life like this big, big stew, right? Big life stew. and a lot of the time people are waltzing about just chucking any old shit in there and then wondering why their stew tastes bad, why life doesn't taste good. And it's because you've let other people's chuck stuff in there that you didn't even know was there. You've not been looking when you've been dropping things into this stew. You haven't been conscious of what you want. If we are to make that conscious choice, right, this is what I want my life to look like, I'm going to choose each ingredient that goes into it, and we get conscious about that. What can sometimes happen is, let's say you are a person that is adventurous, and in your life up to this point, you've been climbing a mountain and you've been doing, physical and adventurous stuff. And then let's say you have ill health and you can't do that. You can't get your hit of that ingredient in that way. That doesn't mean you can't get that hit of that ingredient. It just has to be different. And that is okay. And that goes with, being, when somebody you love dies, right? That doesn't mean love dies. It means, it doesn't even mean that love dies. It just means that it is in a different form, and there, love is infinite. There's more than enough to have more than, different experiences within your life. And I think that's where we get stuck. We think, well, that's the one route and that route's gone, so I can't have that thing. And there's a way around it. You just have to take a moment. And like you said as well, the self-compassion comes in the form of giving yourself permission to have days where you sit in your pants and eat chicken nuggets and have a cry, right? Like that, it's all right. Those days are important, because those days make us assess. We have those days of overwhelm.
It's what you need.
We need those days, and we've got to lean into them. There's sometimes when, society will tell us to keep pushing through stuff all the time. And I'm such a anti-hustle culture person. I just don't like it. I hate that mentality. It's so lacking in compassion of ourselves.
It's pressurizing and rigid. Get up at 4 o'clock. What if you don't like 4 o'clock?
Go back to, I don't want to.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to. There's another way.
Yeah, and I say to clients, quite a lot. Once we get to a certain point where, wow, that is the most glamorous cup I've ever seen. Well done.
It was sent to me by a member, and I'm a little bit ashamed to show it again because I've already broken it. I break all of them, and because I'm so clumsy, all my clients send me nice tumblers, and I just break things. It's awful, and I've broken it. I've had it about 3 weeks.
So. Okay, so I edit this bit out, shall I?
It's very glamorous, though. It's very sparkling looking.
It is, but I say to clients quite a lot, like, there's some good news and bad news. The bad news is that it's on you. The good news is that it's on you.
Yes,
you literally like, you've got the power. You just got to take it. Like I always say to people, like, you can't change what you won't accept. And they say, well, that doesn't make sense. If I accept it, then why would I change it? I said, well, the thing is, if you don't accept it, it's not yours to change. You can't change it then until you accept it. And you might not want it, and that's okay.
Well, it's like we were thinking about accepting all aspects of yourself. That's a really hard thing to do. When I've been doing work over the last few years, I've really had to admit and accept certain failings and certain difficulties that I have within my life, things within my personality. And that acceptance of that is kind of how I'm wired. Doesn't mean we don't change at any thing. It doesn't mean I'm able to potentially change all of that, or that it will never be a pull to behave like that. So things for me, with having ADHD, it's there are impulsivity stuff, there are quick to anger, there are impatience, the things that I don't love. Like, I'm not like chuffed. I'm not like, oh, this is me. I'm impatient and I will interrupt you, and like I'm quick to temper. Those don't sound like lovely traits of a human. However, the flip side of all of those things that we see as negative is me being very quick to anger means I'm really passionate. And when I'm angry about the right things, as I said at the beginning, I'll be on the front line and I'll be angry for the right reasons. And that's powerful and it's good, because anger is not just inherently bad, not always. It's just where we put that anger. And, if I am, impulsive, well, yeah, sometimes that's why I break things, because I'm running to get places and I'm impatient, not ideal. However, impulsivity has meant many times that I've been brave enough to press go on something before I really knew what I was doing, or before I talked myself out of it. Impatience has meant that I want to get something done quickly, and has meant lots of good things. So when we can accept those facets of our personality, and we can do it without going, this means something about me, this feeling of anger that I get, or this feeling of impulsivity, or this impatience I have in me, or the fact I'm chronically overwhelmed, these things don't make me a bad person. By admitting and accepting they are there, it makes me the most human that I can be. And then when you and I talk about this stuff, other people, our clients, our people that are following us can go, I can be human, and it's okay that I have those things as well. And I think that's where the power is, acceptance and creating like a scaffolding to support the things you want to help yourself with. That's the key to it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people mistake, understandably, they mistake that acceptance for, in some situations, forgiveness. But the acceptance is not I like it, it's that I accept it. It is, I'm finally stopping the resistance and the conflict, which is causing an uncomfortable feeling that I'm mistaken for depression or something being wrong, And it's like, I'm just accepting what it is and I'm letting it settle. And now I'm asking myself, well, what do I want to be true instead? And now I can start planning and working towards that instead. And there'll be stumbles and there'll be problems and there'll be little things we got to solve and work to. And there'll be hard moments and there'll be fun moments.
The edge of it. Like, how do I cushion this? If I do this, or like overwhelms the big one, it comes up for all of my clients a lot, and probably all of us, because we're so inundated with information all of the time. So when we're overwhelmed, what is your structure? What is your support for that? Like for me, I genuinely get very chronically overwhelmed a lot. It's not like it's a thing that is part of, you know, and it is probably neurodiversity as well, because there is a lot of thoughts that are constant. And so when I feel that level of overwhelm, I know there is no pushing through that. If I try to push through that, everything that I do from that point will be shit. So I need to stop. That's the first point. Stop what you're doing. You are completely overwhelmed. Get your pen and paper out. And I'm very much about the pen and paper. It's the physical nature of actually writing. And that doesn't mean you have to be good at writing, doesn't mean you have to be an excellent writer, any of those things. But getting out on pen and paper, I brain dump whatever the hell is going on in my brain, whether it's emotional, whether it's jobs, whether it's stuff. And I look at it so I can keep an eye on it. Because when it's in our brains, all that's going to do is just going to swim back around again and again and again. And we can't catch it because it's all, you know, all in our minds. I get it on paper and I try to work through things. I look at stuff that is, you know, needs to be done now. I look at stuff that somebody else can help me with. I look at what is a load of bollocks that I've just made up in my head and is actually true. You know, and I look at that stuff in a much more compassionate way. And I always start by looking at what are the basics of, you know, me functioning as a human that I've missed out on. Have I drank any water? Have I been outside today? Have I moved my body? Have I had enough sleep? You know, have I had any human contact with anybody and had a good conversation socially? If any of that stuff is missing, we will not function properly. And we miss that stuff the most because it's a lot of it's pretty boring.
No, but you're right. You're so right. Like I was example, I was talking to a lady not so long ago, and she was sat like this, and I just got this. I'm very intuitive, and I got this vibe. I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's just like, "I'm so sorry, John. I just need to go for a wee." And I'm like, "Go, it's fine." And she came back, and I said, "That's interesting to me that you would hold back on that fundamental need. I wonder where else you might be doing that. You know, if you can't go for a wee when you need to, if your body is sending you these messages saying go for a wee, what other messages are we ignoring? You know, it's really, really important to recognize that.
That is such a throw that back to the people that are listening. You know, where are you abandoning yourself is a question.
Love that.
Yeah, where are you abandoning yourself? That is why, you know, not going to the toilet, not eating properly, and there's not, I am not judging on this because I am them. Like I am exactly the same. You know, I will find myself doing exactly the same toilet dance. I'm like, I need the toilet, and I'm like, why am I not going to the toilet? Like, because I'm busy and there's no reason for it.
You're prioritizing something else, aren't you?
yeah, exactly that. I think that's a really important key question, because often when we feel sad or stressed, it's because we have abandoned fundamental things for ourselves. That when we can bring that in, we are able to cope with the bigger stuff much more, and we're also able to cope with the like day-to-day stuff more. You know, I say all the time in my spaces, being an adult is hard. None of us feel like adults.
None of us signed up for it.
No, we didn't.
I remember this like sign up for it.
I remember when I was a kid thinking, I don't know why I wanted to be 14. That was always I was like, oh, wow, when I'm 14, things are going to be great. And then when I was 14, I was like, I can't wait to be 18. Like I want to be 18. And now I'm like a grown adult at 38 years old. And I'm like, what was I pushing for this for? This is grown, and this
is hard.
It's really hard. You know,
and at times very boring.
I mean, God's sake, like, so we've just got to, you know, we've got to remember that, even though, especially, you know, people slip into the comparison thing and stuff as well, but we all feel this. It doesn't matter what level you are at and to where you are, what you do. You know, I work with clients from across the spectrum of job titles, from award-winning pop stars to your mum on the school run, and the difficulties are the same. They're just slightly different in terms of their framing, but the feelings are the same. We're all unsure, we're all a bit scared, and we're all not sure we're that good enough, but we're working on it. Like everyone's the same. And I think it's always that judgment we put on ourselves that makes all of this stuff get stuck. And when we just go, okay, basic stuff, where am I letting myself down here? Where am I not showing up for me?
I love that.
Where am I not being compassionate? What language am I using as well as a huge big thing for me? You know, what words am I using to describe this situation? You know, when I was in the hospice with Ross and my husband was literally dying, I was really aware of what I was doing. I was really trying to protect my space. And one of the things I was really conscious of was the language people were using with me. And what I was allowing in, and also being really aware of my own words and the power they had over how I would frame what was happening. So people would say, and I always like to go back to the basic day-to-day language we use. So people saying, how are you? How are you feeling? You know, that kind of stuff we throw around. And people at that time would say, you know, but how are you? And like to me, and I wasn't going to lie and say I'm like absolutely fabulous, because that would be pure toxic positivity bollocks, right? And we're not about that. But what I wanted to do was teach my brain that there was a route through what I was currently in. And so what I would say is, I'm okay, which was true. There was moments of okay. I would say, I'm okay, I'll be better. And that's all I would say. And it was like a script, and it was like a mantra.
There's something very beautiful about that statement. And honest and raw and just all sorts of things. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm always really conscious that, you know, with the kids especially, that my external words become their internal words, you know, like, so I'm always, you know, really thinking about how to frame things for them, especially if it's an important conversation. And, you know, we've spoke a bit about neurodiversity in children before. And so it's even more important, because there's a logic applied to neurodiversity that, you know, if you don't experience it, it's difficult to understand. But actually, very often my son, who's got autism, he'll say something to me and I'll just be like, that's so true. Like, and it makes you realize how much a load of rubbish being an adult is. It's just like my son asks me questions sometimes, and I'm just like, I'm almost like, yeah, I'm with you, man. That is rubbish. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he wants me to explain it, but he's kind of nailed it, and I'm just like, yeah, go for it. You know,
yeah, amazing. They're like little Buddhas, aren't they? They just come out with just the wisdom, and you just think, yeah. Like, I was talking about this with my youngest daughter, who's not neurodivergent that we know of. In fact, we always say our household is like a microcosm of like the rest of the world, because I'm ADHD, Brooke's got, my oldest, autistic, and then Texas is neurotypical.
We have that.
So we're like, we all have to get on. We all have to work through our own brain types within this space. Okay, we got to work together here. And so we're always doing that. But we were talking about, you know, school and stuff. And one of the things that really makes me have to work on my quick to temperness is stupid rules. Like, I don't understand rules that we've just accepted as a rule and we are continuing to do. So one of those things is, you can't go to the toilet during lessons, right? At school, like, that is the rule for the school. And I'm like, why can't you go to the toilet? What does like we've talked a lot about going to the toilet on this episode, but you know, it's a fundamental human thing, right?
Yeah.
So why are we saying to kids, you can't go to the toilet during a lesson? And, you know, I was talking to my daughter Texas about this, and one of the children in her class had asked to go to the toilet, and she'd been told, well, you can't go to the toilet because a boy had gone to the toilet. And this child said, rightly so, because the teacher's mindset was, if two kids go at once, they'll talk in the toilets. Okay, I'm not saying there's no validity in that, but this child said to the teacher, and like spoke back to the teacher and said, well, Noah's a boy, so he's going to go to the boys' toilets and I'm going to the girls' toilet, so we're not going to talk because we're in a different toilet. And she was shut down so quickly and told not to speak back to the teacher and to sit back down. Now, that to me boils my blood, because I'm like, why are we doing that to kids? You've just rightly said, children are so aware and so less affected by societal stuff yet. And us as adults, often very unhealed adults, are telling them to shut up and put up. And yeah, it may have been something in our, you know, ancestry that happened, but surely it's 2023. Can we start listening to kids? I'm not saying they have all the answers. Their brains aren't fully developed. You know, I do.
No, but they're not also, they're also lacking quite the pollution that we have as adults, you know. But
exactly that.
But you're so right, because what that teaches that kid is not to trust themselves. Yeah. It's like me and my wife have this thing. If we ever have a disagreement, and the kids that are there and they see it, and they might say, like, why are you arguing? You know, and it's very natural for someone, we're not arguing, darling, you know, but how do you think that kid feels afterwards? It's like, well, I'm sure I saw you arguing, but maybe I'm wrong, you know, maybe I'm wrong. And it's like, you're planting this little seed of doubt, like, you shouldn't trust yourself. Your judgment is clearly flawed. And it's like, so we just go, we have a disagreement. And we take pride in like having this disagreement. And there might be it was my wife's got ADHD and she's quick to anger and she'll be like, I'm telling you it's that way. I'm like, okay, well, and the kids are like, what's going to happen now?
I bet she's quick to recover though. I bet she's quick to, when she's not cross, then she's like out of it straight away.
She's just a lovely human, and she she struggles with it, and we're working on it, but there has been times where she's hated that part of herself, and she's like, oh, why am I like that? And I'm just like, listen, darling, it's fine. All you can do, and I have this thing that I talked about with clients, is like we practice the behaviors that we want, and it has to be practiced because it removes that pressure of perfection. And if you are going for perfection, good luck, because it doesn't exist, and you will fail. It's the way it is. So we practice those behaviors, and some days we get it wrong. Some days we get it wrong. People think I'm this like, oh, I'm the self-development coach. I must have it all squared away. No, regular mistake maker here all the time. I try my best to learn. It's hard.
That practice and start again. That is it. And I say that all the time to my kids. I think it's such an important lesson that we can all learn. And I say this on loop, there is always the opportunity to start fresh. There's always the opportunity. We just draw a line. We decide right now, anyone that's listening, whatever's gone on up to this point in the day, you don't have to start on a Monday. You don't have to start at the beginning of the day. Just right now, you listen to this right now. Just decide whatever you want to happen. You're going to start practicing it. You start moving forward. What can you do to support yourself? What do you need? Like, what do you need? Ask yourself that and go from there. Like, stop. We have to stop being so hard on ourselves. It's such key to us moving forward. We will have these times when we get it wrong, and that's human. I mean, I was lucky. We talked about, I don't know if it was on this or before, but we were talking about apologies and, the ability to apologize when you get something wrong. And I was taught that. I was really lucky, actually. My dad particularly would always apologize if he got something wrong, and he would say why he was apologizing. It wasn't just like, I'm sorry, as like a to pacify the situation. I'm sorry. It was, I'm sorry for, and what had happened. And what he would always say as well was, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm doing my best. I've never been a parent before. And I really valued that as even as a child. I valued his humility in being able to go, I'm not always getting it right, because even as a child, you when people are being like, right from wrong to an extent. As you do know. So if an adult is acting inappropriate, an adult is not doing something in the right way, or they've said the wrong thing, or they're arguing, or it. You can't pretend that it's not happening. So when we say, well, that's not happening, and we gaslight children, they're like, I'm pretty sure it was. Like, I'm definitely sure it was happening. It's not a good skill. And I say the same things to my kids all the time. I will always admit when I've done something wrong. I will always admit when I said something wrong. I will also explain to them why I maybe got to that point. And I will say, look, this is how this happened. Don't make it about them. It's about me. I will sometimes say to them, though, if you do this, there is a consequence to that with other people. I also teach them that, if you continue to shout at me and call, we have conflict, certainly with neurodivergent children, there sometimes can be heavy conflict with certain things. And we've had lots of that kind of stuff in my home. And I will often say to my oldest, if you continue to push somebody, there is a chance the person will lose their temper with you. And that will happen outside of this house, and they will have less patience with you than I have. And so I don't think that there is no space. I'm all for gentle parenting. I ain't got gentle kids. Like, them kids are feral. They're not gentle. They're strong kids. So I'm all for that. But equally, they also need to learn the world isn't necessarily always gentle. And you have to have an awareness of consequence of behavior as well. There's always an opportunity to fret hard, but there must be an accountability to that as well. And I think all of this stuff, we need to learn as adults, and we can equally teach this to our kids, and they'll get it way quicker than we will.
Yeah, because they don't have all of that history as well, do they? I never forget when our firstborn was super young, he got ill. He had a really high temperature, and obviously it was on a Friday, because it always happens on a Friday when the doctor's closed and you have to go to out of hours, and it's all a big task. So there I am with my wife sat in out of hours with our little boy, and he obviously started to seem fine when we were in there as well. That was another thing he did. And then this older lady was sat next to us, and she looked at and she went, first child. I was like, yeah. She went, can I offer you some advice? I went, please. And she said, you might have read all the parenting books, but your child hasn't. And I was like, oh, good advice. Like, good advice.
That's so good. Do
Yeah.
you know, I got some similarities when I was pregnant with Brooke, and I did like pregnancy yoga and all of that stuff, and was being all one of those like Zen moms and that. And I was clearly like shitting myself about being a parent.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, I mean, I was not like the obvious like mom. I wasn't like, I wasn't the kid that played with like the dolls and wanted to be a mom and all of that. And out of all of my friends, I was the first. I was 26. Was I 26 or 25, 26 when I broke? And, nobody else, people are pushing it back. So a lot of people were a lot older than, they weren't doing those things. And I was the first one. So it's like all scared, no like idea of how to do it. And I remember the yoga teacher saying the simple thing. She was like, she's never had your child, I didn't know it was a girl, your child has never had another parent before. She's never had another mom before. So whatever you do is they will accept as that's how a mom is. And, I often think like I hear from my daughters and stuff about what their friend, they're now at a stage where they do compare because they're going to people's houses and they're coming back home and they're like, Mom, you're really weird. You're really weird. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, their mums don't do that stuff. Like they're like, you're like a child. They often say to me, why are you like a child?
But I've realized that we haven't answered any of the questions I had because we've just been having a good old chat. So I'm probably going to skip a few questions that I had for you. But I think something that you could speak to that would be super helpful. And how are you doing for time? You doing all right for time?
I'm okay today. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Is resilience.
Yeah.
Because I think you can speak to that with some significance. For various reasons, not just the obvious ones. And I just thought to myself, like, resilience is like a massive topic for people these days and something that's, I know, important to you. So what have you learned about resilience?
So resilience, from my perspective, I had my training ground in resilience from being an actor. So, being an actor, you are constantly going to auditions and you're not getting the parts. And even if you do really well, and I worked this out, and I detest maths. I'm very, very bad at maths. But I did some working out for my membership because we were doing a session on rejection and resilience and, how we deal with all of that stuff and how hard it is. And as I was thinking about my stuff, I thought, I wonder how many times, on average, if I were to guess, which is, again, not good at that stuff, but if I were to look at it and think, well, how many years I was auditioning from once I finished Biker Grove, how many times was I probably, even with all of the successes, and I did Waterloo Road and The Bill and Doctors and Casualty and all of the kind of TV shows, how many failures did I have? Not that I see it as a failure, but, how many times did somebody say no to me getting a part? And I worked out on average that there was probably 180 no's.
Wow.
To some significant yeses, some big, so when people look at my CV, they'll see yes on TV shows, they'll see, all of the things I've mentioned already where like, presenting and modeling, all of these things. But the no's, that's a lot of no's to get. Most people in their working career will not experience that many times of that excitement and that I'm going to get the thing, this is going to be the next big thing, and then it not being the thing. That is intense training in resilience. And I think also going to drama school taught me a lot about resilience and a lot about letting go of ego as well, because you would have times at drama school where you would be told things about yourself, whether that's the way that you look and the types of roles that they thought you would play, that actually gave you a sense of having to pick yourself back up. I once did this exercise where we had to walk across the room at drama school, and there was like, I don't know, 100 people, 200 people in the room, and you had to walk across the room one by one, and people would shout out what types of characters that they felt you would play, which is
wow.
Walk across, and I was like chav, stripper, working class mom, single mom, like it's rough. Honestly, it was so rough. Boyish, loads of things came up where I was like, I didn't see myself like manly, rough, just like so just everything was like, and from a human perspective, it's not ideal, but it actually taught me a lot about myself, because it really made me learn like this, certainly in terms of your body and who you are, what you look like, it don't fucking matter. Like, it's nice to decorate this outside shell that we have, and have a fun play around with different clothes and hairstyles, but that is not who you are. Like, that is just a vehicle. It is a meat suit that you are in, and if you so happen to have a meat suit that people find aesthetically attractive in the world that you live in, then that's great, but you did nothing for it. Like, it's just genetics. So sometimes I do look at it, and I'm self-aware enough to know that the meat suit that I happen to be in seems to fit a certain Western world narrative. I'm not completely blind to that privilege, but it also doesn't matter, and it all goes away, and we all age and get, all of that stuff doesn't matter really. But I think actually, in terms of all of that stuff at drama school, it did give me a sense of bounce back. Like, how do you pick yourself back up when you hit that rock bottom? And I think resilience has become this hot topic, whether it's in business or it's in our personal lives. And I think it really is about understanding your own triggers, your knowing yourself enough. I talk a lot about wearing your detective hat and getting to know yourself. And the more you can know your own triggers and wants and desires and pitfalls and landmines and all the things that make it, make you tick and also pick you back up. When you've kind of got that armory, when you do hit that rock bottom, acceptance and all the things we've talked about, acceptance and compassion, and giving yourself a break to accept where you're at and to adjust, give yourself a moment to work out, especially in the big stuff, you need a minute to go, that was hard, this is really hard, this bit. And then you look where you go from next. And I think the more you do this work on yourself, the better you can get at creating this template or this thing to protect yourself. So what do I do that will pick me up? What activities can I do? Who do I need to be around? What do I need to take out of that space? I talk a lot about getting ruthless with protecting your space in those moments. And for me, that's been the key. Really, really get real here. Like, I mean, everything, even people that you love, if in that moment you can't deal with their stuff because you're trying to get through some stuff, give yourself the permission slip right now to go, I will not be around this person. When Ross was dying, I was ruthless. I said no to everything I didn't want to do. I said yes to everything I wanted to do. And I wasn't around people that I didn't want to be around. Anyone that was going to bring their own negativity to my space, no. Anybody that was going to try and tell me their version of what a widow looked like, absolutely not. Fuck right off. I will decide what this looks like to me. And that was really, I mean, if anything, and I'll gift this to everybody that's going through tough times right now, because there's not many gifts in that stuff. It's hard, right? But those that are listening, they're like, this is really hard what I'm going through. Know that in these moments, this is a time when you can create boundaries like you have never created in your life, and nobody's going to say shit to you about it. So I can say all of the stuff, right? When I was, when Ross first died, everyone was giving me a let off on my behavior, on my way of dealing with it, on everything I said I didn't want to do, I'm not doing it. There's a time in your life when you're going through tough stuff, especially, on paper, everybody can say it's tough stuff, where actually you can create a whole new framework for yourself and you can keep that going forward. So protect that space. Watch what you're following on social media. It doesn't matter why you started following this. And I will say this categorically, if for whatever reason you are following me and I don't make you feel good, stop following me. Like, there's a lovely, lovely lady, and this wasn't meant with malice, messaged me recently, and she was a widow going for a really tough time. She was further along in her journey than me in terms of the years. And by following me, she felt judgment of herself because she was looking at snapshots of my life and going, well, she's doing better than me. That's how she felt. It's not true, but that's how she felt. And I said to her, I obviously, you want you in my community and space and you're always welcome, but please feel free to not follow me. Like, that's okay. Like, if it feels bad, That's okay to do that. Like, if you started following Fitspiration person because you thought you were going to go to the gym and all it's making you do is feel bad and eat cake, well, then it's not fit for purpose. So stop doing it. And so resilience is about knowing what your armor is going to be to protect you in these moments, getting ruthless with your space, being compassionate always, and giving yourself a moment to adjust your thinking, especially on those big moments where somebody dies or you get sick or something hard, relationship breakups, job losses. They're hard moments for us. So give your brain and your heart a minute to catch up. Like, stop trying to force it to the next bit because it might not be ready for that yet. Just hold your horses. That's the biggest thing I did with when Ross died. I really said to myself, whatever happens, allow it. Like, however you process this, don't judge it. If you have a breakdown, you have a breakdown. If you need therapy, then you need therapy. If you don't, that's also okay. Whatever way you deal with it, don't let other people in. And there were times when I did, there was times when I let people's noise in my brain, and there was times when I was like, am I okay? Because they keep cocking their head at me and asking me if I'm okay, and I feel like I'm dealing with this okay. But so just really protect that space is the biggest gift that I can say to people. And one thing I also noticed about my own, and this is me understanding myself, was that in my times of difficulty, I realized that I need to create and not consume. So I need to create something. And that was something I really realized. And I used that same principle during lockdown. When we went into lockdown and it was difficult, I was like, well, what helped me through this stuff before? When life gets hard, what did I do? And I was like, well, I created, I did stuff, and I created, programs, and I wrote, and I was literally creative. Like, I'm very artistic. So I created and I didn't consume, which means getting off the news and getting off social media, just being in my own space. And again, that, these are really important things that we can just allow for ourselves.
This podcast comes from lockdown. Like, literally, like, what can I do with my time?
Right.
But I go all the way back to the beginning. That's an incredible experience to go through, just being judged in that way, by your appearance. I mean, I often say it to clients, like, it's not your job to look attractive for somebody else. It's just when you put it that way, it just sounds ridiculous, because it is. It's like, it's not your job to look attractive for someone else. Like, take me as I am. Like, it's the way it is.
So much. I've just been writing, I've just been writing some stuff today, and I was researching people pleasing. And I'm very much into reading sort of the research papers. I mean, that hurts my head, but I like to see what the actual real research is on it. And I've just been reading. I mean, I know it's sort of like possibly obvious, but I found it quite interesting how specific it was. And it was looking at markers of things that we potentially don't notice as people pleasing behaviors, but actually they see it as it's unusual to the rest of the population who don't have that tendency to people please. And one of the things was overly liking people's social media posts. They have a disproportionate amount of likes that they do. And the other thing, based on what you've just said there, was they often have a higher percentage of eating disorders. And that is coming from a place of, I need to look good to make you feel okay with my physical self. How mad is that? That it even comes down to, like what you just said there, I'm people pleasing so much. I don't want to be disgusting in my mind to you. So I'm going to control my physical appearance. And I got that because I grew up with like full body dysmorphia. Like, I thought I was an ogre. Like, I thought that I would walk out in the street and people would pass out, that they would just find me abhorrent. And it took me a long time to unpick that stuff. But I sit here as a person who doesn't feel like that about myself anymore. So I do, for people that are listening and feel like that, I feel you on a different level. It's a horrible place to be in. It's debilitating. And this work that we're talking about, the work that we do, it can get you through it, and it can give you that support. And you won't always feel, I don't feel like that now about myself, and I did. So it's just so interesting, isn't it? How much society teaches us that stuff matters when it doesn't really.
We have that inner wisdom that we're trained to ignore. And I used to work as a PT quite a while ago, and one of the things I used to try to get through to, especially women, because it seemed more common in women, is that, I'd say to them, so, why do you want to change your appearance? Just because to me, what's motivating you is important. And it's like, because I hate myself. Whoa. I look in the mirror and hate myself. And it's that shift from your sort of authentic self to your conditioned self, the little child that looks in the mirror with curiosity and wipes its hands and licks and kisses the mirror, all the way to, what's this? And I'm like, listen, what you're about to do at times will be really difficult. I hate myself is not going to help you anywhere. So we need to find a way for you to accept yourself as you are now. And as we spoke about earlier, we can then change it from that position if we want to, but we're doing it because we want to enhance ourselves, because we respect ourselves, because we love ourselves, because we like ourselves, because we're getting to know ourselves, not because I look in the mirror and go, I hate myself. How many times do you do good things, meaningful things for people you don't like? It's not very often.
Oh my God, that's so true. And it comes, when I think about how I got myself through that time, and it wasn't a time when I was young. So I was like, I was feeling my way through stuff. And the key thing, and I'll give this to anyone listening, was about that language there, because that is awful language. And that was the kind of stuff I was saying to myself. And I knew instinctively that was making it worse. Yeah. And so I decided I would find kinder language, and that it doesn't come easy when you've been saying harsh stuff.
When you've practiced it for years.
You've honed that craft, right?
Yeah. You've become quite good at it.
Oh, you become excellent, right? So you're excellent at that. You've proven you're excellent at that. Let's see how good you are at the other way. And nice. I started, it's a challenge now, right? All happening into their like competition element. Well, what I started with was I'm okay. And that felt awful to say. My inner critic, my subconscious was kicking off like you wouldn't believe. Just saying I'm okay. Every time I heard I hate myself, you're disgusting, I would say I'm okay. I'm okay. And I started there. And eventually I got to a place where I could say, I look nice sometimes. And that made me want to vomit. I look nice sometimes. The inner critic would go, no, you don't, pointing, all of the noise. And I would just repeat that. And it took a long time. It did, because some of that stuff was really ingrained. And eventually I could sit here now and go, I am beautiful and I don't hate myself. And that comes with no sense of anything, but just I'm okay, I'm cool with myself. And one of my clients who is in a similar space of really a lot of self-hatred, and she's still working through it. And she won't mind me sharing, because she shared this outside of our private spaces. And one of the things that she got to, and it just makes me want to cry, because I know how debilitating that feeling is now. And she's from Newcastle, so we're going to do this in Geordie here. I'm just going to teach you all a bit. And what she said, rather than saying I'm okay, she's now saying, and bear in mind it was all of the horrible stuff, she's now saying I'm alright. I'm alright, which means nice. I'm all right. For those that are more I'm all right. So I'm alright, and she's saying I'm alright, and I'm alright when you've been saying I'm disgusting, I'm horrible, and all of the horrible things. That is such a jump, and such a powerful jump. I know, we think it's just like low bar. Go for the low hanging fruit first, and you can move from there. Like you got to start somewhere, and language is something we can do, right? That doesn't take anybody else to like tell us that and you can self-correct. That's the other thing as well. Don't be scared to do it in the moment, because you will do it.
Don't forget to use the eraser.
Exactly that. I love that. That's exactly it. In that moment, you can just go, right, okay, no, let's just delete. Like that's it. Let's erase that bit. We go back. We're gonna try something a little bit nicer, because that's not helping.
It's I don't dislike it, but I take issue sometimes with the way the word self-love is used, because if somebody has been practicing self-loathing for 20 years, asking them to love themselves is ridiculous. It's like sometimes they don't even like themselves. I don't even start with like yourself. I start with get to know yourself. Like what do you like? What don't you like? Usually they don't know. I find that incredible. The amount of people I say, what do you do for joy? And they have no idea, but they can tell me what their husband or their wife likes, or their son or daughter or their best friend or their mum or some random stranger. It's just like, it's amazing.
we did a thing in my membership this month's we do a group coaching session once a month, and the group coaching topic this month was about trust. It was about trusting yourself and trusting others, and how do we do that. And one of the things was that when we are learning to get to know ourselves again, and at this point in our life without judgment, a lot of people really struggle to actually come up with an opinion. And I mean, as you will know, on everything, not the bigger. I'm not talking about what your political affiliation is. I'm talking about and this is always one I come back to, because this is when I can spot a mile off. When someone comes to my home and they can't tell me how they want their cup of tea, and they say just however it comes, absolutely.
Right.
Not in my
that's interesting.
Not in my neurodivergent home, you know. Absolutely not. We are very specific. What cup there will be many, if people come around to my house, there will be many choices. There will be, which cup do you want? Are you more of do you prefer a fine bone china, or do you prefer a mug? You know, do you want this? Do you like a saucer? What kinds of teas do you want? Do you have sugar? Do you have milk? And what shade of tea do you prefer?
Dude, I want to come to your house for tea.
Oh yeah,
I'm into lemon and ginger at the moment. You got any of that?
I'm sure I do, right? I'm sure I do. You know, like that is such a, but we laugh about that like as if that's a nothing thing. But for some people, it really, really is a big deal. And they do it. How you do one thing's how you do everything, right? It is across the board. And so when somebody does that, I see that as a key indicator that there's other areas in their life that they are doing that. So in my session this month with the members, we did a little quick fire round of, you've got to have an opinion. And so I would ask silly questions. I mean, they were low bar stuff, and everybody had to have an opinion. You know, simple things like cats or dogs, which one? Pick one if you had to, forever. Which one you're going for? And as silly as that is, when you're getting to know yourself, it's a really good thing to do. You know, go and print off some long list of silly questions somewhere that you can get online, and just ask yourself, you know, what's your opinion on it? So like, what do you feel about this? And don't judge whatever it is. And what I loved was that the members that I knew would struggle with this, they would see, you know, it was very like one or the other within the old, like somebody would come up with something a little bit nuanced and clever, and I loved it, thinking outside the box, trying to get around it. And but it also allowed those that had an opinion that they thought was perhaps setting them apart from everybody else, they could see that it wasn't, and that other people had that opinion as well. So it's such an important thing. Get to know yourself, date yourself, take yourself out for a cup of tea, ask those questions. How do you and challenge yourself on low bar stuff. Like the next time somebody asks you, what do you want to drink? Tell them what you want to drink. Like we think that's such a small thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Like, what do you want? How do you have your tea? However it comes. No, how do you have it? Because otherwise I know that you're sat there and there was a way you wanted it, and now I feel uncomfortable. You've made the whole, you think you're doing it to make the other person feel comfortable. It's making them feel, especially if they're like me, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I know you didn't tell me what you wanted. So now I'm just guessing, and there are so many variations to this. And you know, having an autistic daughter, and my husband was autistic, he actually had, it's somewhere on YouTube, you can search it. He had a video that he did of him making a cup of tea exactly how he wanted that cup of tea. You'll have to search it. I think it's
that's autistic. Thorough. I like that.
He did one on running a bath as well, how to do a bath by an autistic man. You know, autistic people are our teachers when it comes to specifics. They will tell you what they want.
Oh, you are right about that. I mean, what I take from that is that you teach people how to treat you. You know, that's what it is. You teach people how to treat you. It's like like a pilot on a plane, right? So you get on a plane, right, and the pilot's like, "Hi, my name's Sally," or whatever, and it's just like, "I'm your pilot today. I'm going to take you to." They're so confident about they're going to fly you on this plane to the destination that they're telling you the weather the other side, right? You contrast that with a pilot that comes on, does a little cough, says, where are we going again? Right, yeah, I'm going to try and get you here. You're like, you're getting off the plane. Like, it's like, there's no doubt about it. And it's like my point there is that you are teaching that person to have confidence in you. You know,
Yeah.
like by saying, you know, what you do, there's a person that knows what they like. I feel good around them. I feel confident. I'm going to treat them a certain way. But somebody is unsure, straight away, the kiddie gloves come out and you start getting the patronizing statements and the, oh, you, and like you said earlier, that little side turn of the head and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
you know. But I mean, some really powerful things there. And we'll start to come to the end because we haven't got infinite time, although I wish we did because I love talking to you. My mother taught me how to be a man. You know, that's the truth of it. So I have a really unique bond with women, and understand them and put effort into understanding them too. And a good friend of mine, named Donna Lancaster, she said to me a little while ago after I just recently did a trip to the mountains in Atlas Mountains, and it broke me on every level. It was like the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And she come back with this incredible wisdom, and she said, like, I feel like this pilgrimage that you've been on is what women go through all the time. Women are initiated every month with their menstrual cycles, with pregnancy, with menopause. They're constantly getting called to deepen into nature and to deepen into themselves. And many things in the world, you know, the amount of how do I say this? Amount of stories I hear from women around men's behavior.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm going to put it. Um,
Yeah.
I can't articulate the level of anger I get from some of the things I've heard, and it's consistent and it's with every single woman.
Yeah.
But as a man, that was my initiation, and what it did, and it's we sort of go full circle, is that mountain was my version of that. It was nature saying, mate, the mountain's the mountain. Accept
Yeah.
it, deal with it, get up the hill, don't get up the hill, up to you, you know.
That's my new mantra. Like
Yeah,
when
yeah,
something's hot, the mountain's a mountain, babe. Move
yeah,
around it. The
yeah, yeah,
mountain's
yeah.
a
You can
mountain.
do it. You
That
could
is
go.
the danger.
Like the man doesn't
Yeah.
care if you get to the top. It doesn't care if you try. It doesn't care if you give up. Doesn't care. It just doesn't care. Same with the menstrual cycle. Doesn't care. It's happening. Like change
That's
your life. Don't
so,
change your life.
such
You
a
know.
good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
If I think about all of the stuff in my
Mm,
life that has been difficult, I think it's that acceptance and that
mm,
sometimes we look for answers, right? It's human nature
yeah.
when there is no sense other
No.
than it just is. And I remember at Ross's funeral, we had like we're not religious, so we didn't have a religious, I forget what it's called when it's not, what is it called? Humanist. And was one of those. And it what I loved about that was it was very much about Ross rather than being about a higher power or a god or something. It was just about his celebration of his life. And one of the things that the lovely lady who's called Tag, and she did her talk, and she said, you know, there was no more reason for Ross to die than which leaf falls off a tree. And I just thought, that's exactly it. Like there was
Wow.
no more sense to it, and there was no more reason for it. Like it wasn't. We can concern ourselves with the why did that, and I do not fall into this. Only the good ones die young, and all of that shit. Like that's just something we tell ourselves, like to feel comfortable. No, bad guys die as well, and your old people die, and it's sad, and young people, and you know, there's no sense to it, and it's I think that's something, you know, like the mountain is the mountain. And
Mm,
sometimes the grasping at looking for some kind of answer in that or why, it doesn't always serve us to keep doing that. I think
no.
sometimes that acceptance and that, okay, that has happened. Where do we go from here? That
Mm.
is such a powerful thing for us. What do I do with this information? Okay,
Mm.
that is the thing. And I can't
And there
change
is
it.
a
So
time for that, isn't it? You know, it's not straight away, and you know, you have to give yourself that moment and stuff like that to move past it to try and understand. But that it's a real trap. That why, you know, I got a friend who I said to him one time, you know, if you could know the answer, what would you rather have? The answer to every question or the ability to not care? And what we realized was that if you get the answer to every question, guess what? You got another question. Sometimes
never
you
ends.
just need to crack on and just like not care. And yeah, and it's like, you know, why? What is even why mean? Why is such a finger pointing question, isn't it? It's like why? When actually I found that, you know, why usually leads to blame of somebody else or yourself. When actually the better way to look at it is what's more exploratory. It's like, yeah, what you're starting to look outwards. You're starting to try and understand it on a wider level, so you can move forward.
What is what
Yeah,
is what is
yeah,
joyful? What is, and I think that's a really good a really good skill for people to really consider. And you know, this comes down to how our brain is wired and how our brain works. But when we are focused in, when we are zoomed into that painful thing, it's very, we literally can't see the good. We can't see that 20 quid at the end of the road. We can't see that because we're completely stuck. And so start now, and some people listening will be in their pain, but maybe you're just in, you know, in the middle of stuff and it's just life and you're just living. Start training your brain to see the joy. That is something that genuinely, and we can talk about this as gratitudes or seeing the joy or whatever you look at it, that's what pulled me through when Ross was dying. To watch somebody you love dying and to see that, that's so painful, like that you can't focus on that, like so painful that you can barely fathom what that is. So you look for the outside of that and you look for, but where's the joy, where's the good people, where's the love, where is all of that stuff? Not to sound like the Black Eyed Peas there, now that song's going to be in my head, but where is the joy? And we, you know, my kids and we often, you know, before bed I'll say what was good about today and what was joyful. Or when we're walking around, I'll say, you know, what's good? Was it? And sometimes, you know, in the hard days, it's hard to know what those are. You've got to dig really deep on those days. But actually, the days when it's hard is when it's non-negotiable. They're the days when you have to do it, and it's like you know, it's not easy. I'm not saying this is easy.
No, none of it ever is.
None of it ever is. It's messy. Comfortable. Yeah. No, sorry, there's no pass on that one.
No.
But to get yourself through and to make sure that you are dragging your brain, keep kicking and screaming to seek more joy, so it has the ability to see the opportunity to find 20 quid, to find a new love, to seek, you know, a new opportunity. You literally can't see it until you train your brain that. So you start right now, you know, you look around and you go, what can I hear? What can I taste? What, you know, what made me laugh today? What was, and on the days when it's tough, you know, before my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor, he was experiencing depression, obviously, because there was a lump in his head and it was literally doing that. But we, you know, before we knew that and had that piece of the puzzle, we were working on, and he was really bad. Like there was a year when he was really bad. And every night before we went to bed, I would say, tell me something good about today. And, you know, you sometimes wouldn't want to do that and say, I don't give a shit. Tell me something good. Something was good today. I don't care whether it was a moment when you didn't think about something shit, or a good cup of tea, or, you know, something you heard on the radio, whatever it was, there was something, and that's all you have to focus on. It's the thing that thing that will just keep you going until the next good thing. Because as much as our brain wants to tell us that, oh, something bad's going to come, we have that joy foreboding. I think Brene Brown talks about it as joy foreboding. Like we're in our joy, but we're worrying about the joy leaving us, so we're spoiling the joy. And we all have that in us. Like we're like, something bad's coming, it comes in threes or some shit. Whatever. Nonsense, put it in the bin. Right, we're not talking like that anymore. But if we can accept that something bad will come, that's a guarantee. Something bad will happen in your life again, for sure. But you know, if you accept that, then you also have to accept that something good is on its way as well. And that's what I want those that are going through stuff right now. Something good is coming. That's all you need to know. Other than that, it doesn't matter. Just focus on something good is going. And if right now you got to hold on, but hold on, and something good is coming, and we have to start accepting that as truth as well.
That joy, that happiness, that fun is always there. People tell themselves that they're unhappy because all they are doing is acknowledging the bad things that are happening. They're not acknowledging the happiness. So how would they know? Of course, they don't feel happy because they're never acknowledging it. That smile they got from somebody in the supermarket. My son feeds the dog crisps. Watching the dog eat crisps cracks me up. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And it's just like, sometimes it is just a good cup of tea. That was delicious. It was really nice. It was an amazing conversation with somebody who was like-minded. These are all things that are happening all the time. I promise you, to me, it's impossible that somebody has not got something in the day that was at least okay. Do you know what I mean?
Balance. For every positive there is a negative. For every negative there is, we cannot deny it. And I know you know what, it's lazy thinking on our part as humans to just
Mm.
accept that there's one truth and that one truth is negativity.
Mm.
And just for knowledge, anyone listening, that is how your brain is wired. It's a
Mm.
survival mechanism. So
Absolutely.
you're not wrong. It's just your brain going,
Mm.
danger is everywhere, probably going to get eaten by a bear soon. Right? But your brain is in panic mode. And when you're going through tough stuff, more heightened, it's in its, amygdala part of its brain. It's not in its logical thinking. So it's just thinking it's about to be attacked by a bear. But what you have to also recognize is that around that worry, there's so much good, and we have to find ways to calm our love nervous systems down, and then notice the other stuff. And you get better at it. Like, I'm annoying now. Like, I'm actually really annoying at it, because I fully admit that. Like, I will walk along the street, I take the kids to school or pick them, and I'm like, let's climb that tree, there's a squirrel, let's go. And I'm like up, like looking at things and trying to take pictures of stuff, and the kids are like, why are you like,
they're like, eye roll,
why?
cringe, come on, mom.
Like I said, I was the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school, realized that she was at a club that I'd obviously forgotten about, and then thought, right, I'll just go for a walk in the park. And went to this lovely park near where I live, there's a little tiny little pond, but it was all really like lovely time of day, the sun was shining. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and sit by that pond, and I'm going to put some like meditating music on. I'm just going to sit here and just take this moment in, right? So I was sat there by this pond like a gnome, with my eyes closed, listening to music, loving life, like just loving life. And yeah, it's a really busy park, and a lot of the people there are from my kids' school. And I know I'm odd. Like, I know that's weird. I know that looks weird. So
been confirmed by your children.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I told Texas, my youngest, that's what I did while I was waiting for her. And she was like, why are you like this? That's so weird. What if people saw you doing it? And I was like, listen, I'm keeping my peace.
Yeah.
I'm in my joy. You're not going to spoil that. I was like, doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I live in a world where I am in a bubble, and I really don't I've never considered that somebody, it doesn't matter to me whether somebody walks past and goes, what's that weird woman doing sat like a gnome by the pond? It's really not my business.
I really want you to do a social media post of you sat by a pond dressed as a gnome. Like, just do it for me, please.
I mean, see, now the seed is planted, so yeah. There's a possibility that could happen.
It's my birthday there at the month. Come on.
Oh, happy birthday. It's a picture of me dressed as a gnome. I mean, the weirder things have happened, to be honest.
Okay, well, I'll look out for it. But listen, I have taken up so much of your time. I'm so grateful. You've been really generous with your time today. I just want to ask you one last question, and I asked it to everybody. Is there anything that you'd like to pass along to people that will help them with their self-development?
Oh my gosh, we've covered so much ground. I think, you know what, I think the message that I would really say overall is what we've covered so much in this, which is be kind to yourself, be on your own team, just get behind yourself, champion yourself, talk to yourself out loud, coach yourself through your day. Be your own friend. Nobody gets anywhere by shaming themselves forward. It's never been a thing. So just be on your own team. That would be my main message.
It's fantastic. I mean, we resonate over that. Truly believe that compassion is the secret weapon. If you want to move past a situation where someone's done something to you or something's happened, trying to understand them and their life and what all the things that led into it. There's a lot of times when you might judge, and it's perfectly human to do so. But when you look into it and you ask yourself that really difficult question, what would you have done? It's interesting. It's always an interesting answer if you're really honest with yourself, So compassion is definitely the answer. I really just think you're incredible. I'm really, really grateful for your time. I'm really pleased I got to speak to you. I hope I can speak to you again at some point. But it wouldn't be fair of me to not ask, because I'm sure everyone's gonna wanna get a bit more. What's next for you, and where can people find you?
Absolutely. So I am hollymatthews.com/all my stuff. you'll find all my stuff. I do have a podcast, which I rarely actually record anything for, but there's loads on there. So if you're new, I'm completely, all over the place with that. But it is what it is, and I'm fine with it. So if you can see me now as well, if you're on YouTube, and this is my book, The Happy Me Project, a no nonsense guide to self-development. It's 60 chapters, and each chapter is only 4 pages. And at the end of it, it's got tangible stuff for you to actually go away and try and do. And I do not expect you to read this in a linear fashion. Read it back to front, whatever way you want to read it. Flick through it, pick a page. This one's called Stop Being So Damn Judgy. What else we got? Nature, Not Netflix. It takes us back to me being by the pond.
I love it.
So we got it all. This is also for our neurodivergent friends as well. There are big spaces between each paragraph, and it is very much written in a way that is suitable for our neurodivergent people as well. And I'm doing an event in November, which is in London. It's called Restival. A whole day of speaker and activities and self-loveliness. What else have I got going? And the life coaching membership, so the Happy Me Project membership, is also always available, and the doors are open. And I always say to people, it is a safe space to land. If you just want a community and a safe space to land, to hang out, be around like-minded people, that is there as well. I, social media wise, hang out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter now and then, but not really these days. It's all got a little bit angry over there. TikTok, but again, I'm a little bit new over there. I do pop in time to time. Everyone's telling me to, including my kids. The pressure is high over on the TikTok and YouTube, and this is it. It's a challenge, isn't it? But come and let me know that you've come from this podcast, and I look forward to meeting all of you lovely new people.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. And I hope I get my photo on my birthday. And other than that, I look forward to doing this again someday.
No worries. Catch up with you soon, Jenny. Take care. Bye.